Esteemed Chairperson, thanks very much. Erol Göka and Hakan Türkçapar dealt with two different dimensions of the issue, and I'm going to talk about the trauma that emerges after the terrorist actions and what are the results of this trauma. I'm going to talk about this. When we are leaving our house in the mornings, when we are coming back in the evenings, we live with the information that we will be able to come back. At least we hope this. We will be met in the office very well. Everything is going to be fine. And without any accidents or troubles, we would be able to come home and we would meet our children. That's how we think. Trauma represents the end of the world as we know it. A bomb explodes, and after this bomb, we start to think of the world not as controllable as we thought, and ourselves as not invincible as we thought. So the narrative of the world is wounded, and positive illusion, as we call it. The illusions that allow us to grab the life, we understand that they are illusions. We feel them more. In the traumatized individuals, anger is a strategy of survival. By holding on the anger, they overcome their feelings of anxiety and fear. They can mask those feelings. On the picture below, this is the neuroimaging. You see the resting brain functions of a traumatized individual. On the left there is the healthy brain, and on the right hand you have a brain with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and brain continues to operate. Brain is always alert and looking for something that may go wrong. Yes, we would like to know that the world is more controllable and more tolerable after trauma. This information is hurt, destroyed. In terms of attaching a meaning to life, we are making an effort for this. So far we created a meaning for the life. When we are collectively wounded from our spirits, when we are traumatized, so also our way of explaining the world is wounded. We start to think that, I think there was a problem in our understanding of the world, so that we experience this. People start to discuss their beliefs, their faiths. They can develop a discourse of hatred, hate speech against the causes of this. And after this destruction, we try to rebuild our own world. The feeling of despair is what we see, especially after the traumas. The world is not under my control anymore, and whatever I do, I can't change something. Maybe this is the biggest emotion that the terror acts on. By dragging the people into a feeling of despair and intimidation, they create islands of anger in order to pit one section of the society against each other, so that by destroying the tissue of social solidarity, they open the people into manipulation and for their operations. People are feeling trapped. They do not want to take initiatives, fight or flight systems are altered, and rather they either freeze or become agitated. Executive system is disengaged. You know, fight or flight principle is also added by the freeze or agitated principle. The trauma created by terror may create very often a reaction of freezing. Between left hemisphere and right hemisphere there is a gap within the brain. The connection between these two are interrupted during the traumatic experiences, and the left part that is more analytic, that is more linguistic, this more analytic part becomes incapable of making its words heard by the right brain, as if the left part of the brain is incapable of speaking. That's why traumas are most of the time remembered by the right hemisphere, because people are having difficulties in explaining their traumas with their own words, and rather than a story that has a beginning and ending, they think it as of some interrupted and fallen apart pieces and sections of experience. You see the gap between the left and right brain. The left brain that sedates the right brain becomes incapable of carrying out this job, and right brain sensitizes the right part of the brain excessively, and it starts to give alarm inappropriately, as if a broken alarm clock. This incapability of expression with words is very interesting. A couple of months ago, there was a workshop with the people who lost their beloved ones during the military coup attempt of 15th of July. A mother told me the following: I don't want to speak to anyone. My sorrow, my pain cannot be understood by anyone who didn't experience what I have experienced. Only those people who experience the same thing with me can understand my emotions. This is what she said. Traumatic experience creates a gap between those who experienced the trauma and who didn't experience it. Many victims of trauma would like to speak in front of the people who have the same experience. Traumatic people live in the past and they have difficulties in connecting with today. Even in their own bodies they don't feel safe, and rather than staying in the moment, they spend their time by looking for the hints for the potential threats. The hypervigilantic situation, collecting the negative stimulants, evidence from the outside, and getting prepared for the threats. This is the situation that they are in. And as you can see here, the traumatized individuals, after a while, they can also experience dissociation during a trauma, and this dissociation may cause inattention, and this also may cause some accidents in the daily life. Let's talk about the collective trauma for some time, because when we are organizing this Congress, this was one of our purposes. We didn't want to ignore the problems that our society is experiencing. This was the thought that we based on. We have experienced huge losses. Gaziantep attack, train station, Yeşilköy, airport, Reyna attack. Successively, on top of each other, they have disturbed our feeling of wellness. When we're talking about a collective trauma, it is a trauma that has something to do with the entire society, where the well-being of the entire society has been disrupted, which means that the cultural narration is hurt. The stories that connect us with the past and that create the connection between the past and today. And we're talking about the attacks that would like to damage the collective wholeness of the society. We are all embedded in a cultural narration. We all listen to folk songs, folk jokes. We are listening, we are growing up with the stories that are inherited from the past. And such kind of stories secure the society in a sense. For example, there are two studies. They conducted a research on the children living in Gaza and South Africa. And children, when they took shelter within their own cultural narrations, when they feel comfortable within them, culture has a more wider impact in terms of protecting the people from the trauma. For example, in South Africa, the apartheid victim children, and in Gaza children, when they took shelter within their own cultural codes, it is identified that their ability to cope with the trauma is higher. The mass trauma destroys our feeling of safety. Not only our intra-physical world is destroyed, our all defense mechanisms are destroyed, and our worldviews are destroyed, as if we become naked. The fundamental feeling of safety is destroyed. This is what makes the life possible, feeling of security. If we do not feel confident towards each other, if we stop being people who do not wish good things to each other, then this society turns into something unlivable. A society where we expect bad things from each other becomes a society where its livelihood becomes possible. After the traumas, people experience some social sorrow, feeling of being rejected, feeling of being excluded, feeling of invaluableness, and they can also feel that their cultural presence is under threat. Mistrust and fear become very dominant feelings, and this mistrust damages the tie between the social groups. This is very dangerous. I believe that the final purpose of terrorism is to stage such a play in Turkey, like many people, and they create clusters, islands of mistrust. As mentioned by Mr. Hakan, before he or she hurts me, I would like to hurt her. This is the feeling, and a feeling of retaliation is formed. She can never think about my well-being or my security, so instead of her harming me, I'm going to harm her. Instead of being a victim, I would like to be the oppressor. I would like to be the person who inflicts pain. Such a mental mechanism may intervene, looking for the scapegoats, becoming alone, or unconditional surrender to an external authority. Such a feeling may develop. Trauma, against this mistrust tendencies of trauma, we should stand. We should stand against its impact of destroying, eroding the social life. We should resist against this. In our days, the terror is a mega terror, and different from the past terrorism experiences, it has gained a different identity. This is most of the time what was said. This is the difference. Before that, the terrorism was mostly focused on being visual. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was more tendent towards, willing towards becoming visual. Let's say, They are going to make an action, and together with this action, that momentary attention of the people will be attracted. Even they didn't want to kill many people. They just wanted this action to be sensational. But in our days, the understanding of terrorism is not content with the sensation. They would like to inflict psychological damages, a huge amount of psychological damages behind. Psychologically, they are trying to turn the people into defeated people, victimized people. That's why they are attaching a huge importance to the visuality. For example, look at the execution scenes of ISIS, as if they're coming out from a Hollywood movie. This is a diabolic mindset behind this design, and they are trying to inflict a paralysis on the people psychologically. When an individual is subject to such an image, it's not possible for them to experience a secondary trauma as well. Social injury that introduced group polarization. We are embedded into prejudices, very simple prejudices. The world can be divided into white and black through such kind of actions. We should be very attentive to this.
Yes, this decrease in trust prevents people to speak with each other. The people sees each other less. The people listens to each other less. One of the most important components of social justice is the question that might I have a share in the sufferers of the other people? Might I have a share in the pains of other people? This is a more radical empathy. If I am harming that person, I have to stay back from here so that that person will not experience that suffer. When we have the social lack of trust, let alone the not to harm the other people, we will just exaggerate the harms given by that person, and we will ignore the harms which we are giving them. And in-group and out-group differentiation comes to fore in a very sharp way. Our tribe, our group, ours bad habits will be seen as good, and the good habits of the other people will be seen as good. And this will just explode the breaches among societies. And this collective trauma brings about to be afraid of the strength of the criminals, and a fear which prevents the democracy. We can detach our roots, our social identity can be damaged. We have to believe in truth and justice. We need a social repair mechanism. The same elements of society should cure the other elements, and we need a bridge of cure in between. Of course, different societies had very interesting experiences. For example, South Africa, they have truth and encounter commissions. The perpetrators of violence came together with the victims of violence. They told their stories to each other, and the perpetrators apologized themselves before the victims, and different countries had different studies. And I think in Turkey we need a similar work. And I'm writing on this since maybe more than 10 years. I called them the tents of, or the rooms of mercy. We need to establish rooms of mercy. Note of translator, this is alluding note of persuasion, which was a way of oppression in the past. And we need such a social mobilization where the victims are apologized. We need such a process after especially terror issues, terror incidents. We should be attentive not only what we have lost, but what we are keeping. After trauma, we can only build up on what we have while reconstructing the life. When we just focus on what we have lost, when we mourned over that, we cannot see what can give us the persistence of life, the joy of life. Actually, we have to focus on them more and more. We are speaking about the concept of resilience. It's discussed more and more in psychology. A Chinese proverb goes like this: when the wave goes up, the boat will go up. The human spirit grows by coping with challenges. Life is not a garden of roses without any thorns. We always are face to face with hardships. If we can cope with them, our spirit will become more resilient. This doesn't mean that everything will happen, everything will turn to back. Never a spirit turns back to what it used to be. It comes back in a much more resilient and strong way. Neither individually nor socially, following big suffers, we cannot stay same. It's enough. What's important is to use it in a positive way. After a traumatic incident, we have to show the flexibility to grow. If we have these sources and flexibility, I think we can become a more resilient society. Of course, there is a role of state here, a role of government here. The source of suffer should be eliminated. We need the security and safety of people. If somebody harms, if a part of society gives harm to the other side, this should be prevented. The state should act as a just referee. An approach which is preferring a social sector over others cannot be accepted. So if we are to define this, the definition for a resilient society is the capacity of a community to deal with a major crisis by adapting and growing while minimizing casualties and preserving a fair quality of life for all its citizens and maintaining its core values and identity. This might be the definition to be used. We have to preserve our self-confidence. After traumatic actions, we should believe in that we can cope with it, because this will bring about getting out of trauma in a faster way. We need a strong network of relationship. This will help us to get out of trauma in a faster way. The meaningful relations, the friendly relations help us to cope with this in a faster way. We should believe in that the world can become a better world with our just acts. Despite all traumas, we should preserve our optimism. There are elements which are necessary for getting rid of trauma. The retaliation or revenge emotions create a vicious circle. Anger can be a useful emotion, but it is positive when it is constructive, when it asks for justice. But if the anger says that I am justice, and if anger begins to burn things down, this will bring about a lynch culture, which says that I am angry, so I'm right. And these individuals can create a country where angry individuals can implement any kind of violence. So we have to focus on the positive sides of trauma, the solidarity thoughts, to be proud of becoming a part of a nation, our effort for a strong nationality, and to feel closer to strength of national self-esteem, higher social cohesion, and to feel close to others. If a trauma triggers all these, we can have a positive result. This is the end of my time, but just 1 minute more. Post-traumatic growth is coming to fore in psychological literature more and more. Sezai Karakoç has a poem. He says that the weeds grow after rain. We had very heavy rains in our country. The torments, storms, but we can have positive psychological developments after this. We can feel more connected to the other people. We can have a stronger and renewed sense of spirituality. We can have enhanced feelings of personal strength, and we can recognize new paths and directions in our life. We can be more aware of our emotions. We can be more mindful about our emotions. We can be more kind and compassionate to ourselves. We can feel more connected, and we can find more commonalities with other human beings. This self-compassion can create such a strengthening effect. Of course, we have to work for regaining our beliefs before trauma. And we can do this only by accepting the reality of trauma, not by ignoring it. Thank you very much.